Right, let's review the question from a user, right? What would you do in my shoes? I've been asked to join a project whilst they're firmly in the execution stage with no prior planning. The sponsor and lead cannot tell me how the project should flow, key deliverables, milestones, what needs to be tangibly updated, systems, legal documents, etc., and cannot tell me the stakeholders who would work on these parts. I'm new to the business, I don't know exactly how the internal operations work here, so I feel like I'm in the dark. They've given a deadline that is 21 days from today for all this work, and I don't know how I can manage this. I ask relevant questions to the sponsor and lead, if they just don't give me a solid response and can ignore my requests for clarifications. They want me to put together a project timeline, but without knowing who the key stakeholders are, how can I understand this? If I was going to run this project from the start, I'd want to have a call with all key stakeholders to outline deliverables that would need to be completed to meet milestones and timelines based on that. But nothing like this has happened. There is barely any documentation, and much of the necessary work is done by senior team members, having serious discussions with each other without informing all stakeholders, and somehow it appears things have been completed. Right now I'm focusing on execution and trying to understand the process of what is to be done. Several departments have already flagged that this project execution will cause a dramatic strain on their resources capacity, and I feel deeply guilty but also powerless to do anything to fix it. Create an accurate timeline of tasks and milestones planned is feeling impossible. I'm trying to create a project charter document with the information I do have, and I also have a decision log to hold people accountable, but I'm stuck. What would you do in my shoes? So guys, unfortunately that's a typical situation in many IT companies where the person gets dropped into a project and they're told like, oh, we have a deadline, we have teams working on the project, and you need to coordinate the teams in order for them to make it, for them to execute the project until the deadline, right? And the deadlines are set, and nobody knows where the deadlines came from. Nor developers, nor business executives never synchronized all that between them, right? So it was just maybe the numbers which were taken from somewhere, like from some random feedback, whether from a developer who was just asked a question like, how big you would think this project is, or somebody just made up this number based on the previous implementations of projects, right, without even consulting with the developers, right? So basically, in order to fix that situation, you need to start with understanding what the stakeholders' request is, right? What the project is about, what are the business deliverables for the project, what are the key milestones the business stakeholders envision in that project, right? That's very important to understand the business context and expectations from them. Then you need to understand the system components, the technical part of that project, right? You need to talk to developers, to tech leads who are responsible for that project, who are assigned to execute the whole or part of the project, right? You need to talk to the teams to understand their part of work on that project. And you ultimately need to understand where the estimate came from, where the deadline came from. Was it provided by developers, or was it provided by project managers, or like by business, right? So only after those interviews, you will be able to see the whole picture, right? The business part of things and the developers part of things. And then it is important to synchronize that into a single timeline, right? To understand what the components are, what the business goals are. And then when you have this all on a single timeline, you will see where this process actually synchronized and where it's completely desynchronized, right? So having the plan and having that decomposition in your hands, if you see that the deadline expected is very different from the deadline that is provided based on the effort required for this project, then you will have a document at your hands that you can then provide to stakeholders to explain why the project can't be done on time, for example, or if it can be done on time, then you can just provide with the status, right? So you can just say, okay, great, looks like the project can be done on time, here's the status what we have, right? And then you can talk to the teams to constantly, get the updates like weekly or monthly to get everyone synchronized and fix the road blocks if there are any. So in this way, you can ensure that your responsibility is accomplished by delivering the project, but you're also not providing the unreasonable expectations to stakeholders, right? And if the deadlines can't be met, then you need to communicate that to stakeholders and then present the document with all the efforts and the composition for them, right, in order to prove why that is impossible. What decision they make after that, whether they want to maybe cut the scope or add more resources or maybe reshuffle the schedules a bit, that's that's up to them, right? You need to provide information, the truthful information about the project status, about deliverables, about expectations, and that should be your job to do. And then if something is not possible, something is unreasonable, then you make sure that you communicated that. If the decision is still to proceed, to go with the risks, well, it is what it is. Then the risks were accounted for, and the decision was made by stakeholders to go ahead with them, right? So that's essentially the strategy around this topic. And if you want to learn more about the composition and about scheduling and about how to do all the things in more details, you can check out the other videos on this channel and just discover the world of IT development and project management in details on the channel. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's move to the next question.